Micro and I had managed to beat Left 4 Dead 1 on expert mode with just the two of us on every map. And some of them took longer than others. The last one, it was Dark Harvest, took us quite a few tries. So when Left 4 Dead 2 came out, we jumped on it for that challenge of cooperatively defeating something. However, this new game had a setting called realism mode, and of course that meant we had to play it exclusively on expert realism. I think we played for 2 or 3 weeks without much success on that first map, and that prompted me to start doing a little bit of research to see if I could find somebody giving me an example of a run that they finished on expert realism mode, just so I knew, what we're doing, because while we're playing, we moved pretty well and it felt like we were making small progresses. So I was trying to see how people handled certain situations, what they did in certain little areas, and while I was checking them out on YouTube, which there were very few that actually did it legitimately in expert realism mode, and they were all on the computer, and I noticed that the hordes were less. From looking at it, I didn't actually sit down and count seconds or anything, but when we were playing, it felt like I would say every 30 seconds or so, maybe 45, there would be at least a little horde. So it was constantly, they were attacking through the whole map. There was no time to ever go slow. So we had devised a way to just sprint through it as fast as possible, and it always felt like the beginning of the night we made it the furthest within the first 4 or 5 tries, and as the night progressed we just got worse and worse. And I don't know if that was the AI figuring out where we like to stand, or if that was just us getting fatigued and forgetting or getting fatigued and losing our abilities or losing our aim. But watching people beat it on the computer made me feel like it was more difficult on the Xbox. Plus, you can't really aim as well with a controller. And I also noticed that they completely avoided tanks. I hadn't seen a single expert realism playthrough where they beat a tank and still completed their mission. And that was a little disappointing for me, because we did figure out how to beat tanks and became pretty proficient, even with just the two of us, at beating a tank on expert realism. That led us to start picking up other players, other friends that I had, to see if they can help us. That never worked out. While trying to teach them how to beat the game, I came up with a couple of core principles in expert realism mode that will help, that I think that I would always tell our new players to consider. Rule number 1 is never fire and run backwards. This will prevent you from shooting your friends without noticing. Number 2 is pay attention to your friends and which way they're aiming, so that you don't run on crossfire. Be aware of where your friends are, so that you can help them in case if they get caught, because it only takes like 2 or 3 hits for a hunter to bring you down to nothing, to down you. And then of course, have an idea. Okay. And then of course, don't all aim for the same zombie. At times it felt like watching little kids play soccer, where our friends would, anytime anything came out that stirred, all wanted to unload all of their ammo on it as quickly as possible. And it was very difficult to get them to understand that we don't all need to kill everything. We can take our corners and still be okay. We also had a lot of trouble when the stuff was getting ugly, when it's clear that we're in a bad position and we're about to get a heavy attack. We need to back up into a better place. Noticing that was a bad position and then figuring out where to back up to would catch so many of our people, and it would end up just being me and Andrew defending a hallway while the rest of them died in the courtyard because they didn't notice the enemies, or they just didn't know where to go. That was very frustrating. So to date, We have yet to beat any of the levels on expert realism, in spite of some significant training. At least on the first map, again the mall map, I know of a bunch of little areas you can hide that make it difficult to zombies to get you. I have the whole map memorized in my mind. I think we even do that window trick where you skip almost completely the intro level. Although I think that's a bad thing, because by skipping it, it makes the zombies, it makes the computer give you more when you get to the next level. I think the quicker you do that, the first intro, the more difficult the AI will make the next area, which is kind of the problem. Is that when the few times we got past that area where you got to bring the coke and all that, we did it so fast, because that's really the only way to do it, that it made it even harder at the mall area, where it's almost impossible, or for us at least, where it's almost impossible for two people to cut through during that alarm sequence to shut it down. We did have a lot of fun, but it's just one of those things I was meaning to accomplish and was never really able to. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow for tip day. See ya.